Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of the Jets Life podcast. It is um, week 11. We're recapping what was another disappointing loss by the New York Jets. Something that's become all too familiar. Believe it or not, we've only had one victory Monday all season long. Our three wins were two Thursday night games: one to the Patriots, one against one against the Texans, and then obviously our only win on Sunday this season came against the Titans, which I wasn't able to give a Monday recap to. So I still have yet to give a victory Monday recap all season long. I traveled to that Tennessee game, so Monday was a travel day for me getting back home. But yeah, nonetheless, we sit here again. Um, another Monday, another loss. The Jets' loss total is now to 8. Our record 3-8. If you're looking at Tankathon, which is where the season has eventually led us to at this point, I think there's still a minuscule 2% chance, but this team has proven very little for any of us to assume that they can run off some sort of crazy win streak, which is what it would take in order to turn that 2% into a playoff spot. So we sit here in the middle of November, once again, a team on the outs of the playoffs, making it now 14 consecutive years of missing the playoffs. And once again, in January, looking for a new head coach, looking for a new GM. There's been reports that Joe Douglas is already planning his next job with the Baltimore Ravens, going into their front office again. Um, so we'll be looking for a new head coach, new GM, and while you look at this roster and you look at the cap ramifications of what it could potentially take to get out of Rodgers' contract. There's no likelihood, in my opinion, unless there's something that I'm completely missing, as far as an out of Rodgers' contract without taking a massive $25 million dead cap hit. I know that there's some post-due ones, so you can save some money there, but you're still taking a cap hit in the future, which, let's be real, you're paying the guy. I mean, I think most indications would lead to keeping him around. But all too familiar sight with this team, just once again coming out completely flat. Doesn't look like they're prepared to play football. The entire first half went by, and they didn't get a single first down until that last possession of the first half, which eventually resulted in a touchdown. And decided that Brees Hall is probably a decent player on this roster and probably should be the focal point of this roster. And Brees Hall had a monster game. You can see the ticker down below: 121 all-purpose yards, 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns came within 3 plays, 3 offensive snaps. The the passing touchdown, the receiving touchdown, where he just basically caught the ball and turned around and wide open grass. And with his speed, that's just not acceptable for a defense to give him that much space. He takes advantage, scores the touchdown, and then after the Javon Kinlaw fumble recovery, led to a on a second down, a pitch to the outside, and all you saw was green in front of him for a second touchdown of the game. The Jets' second half offense was okay. I'd like to see again more capitalization, more touchdowns being scored, as opposed to settling for field goals. It's been a constant issue with this team. When you have Aaron Rodgers, a guy who's known for his red zone efficiencies, to settle for field goals in certain situations is just not acceptable. And that's what we do on a routine basis. Late in the game, had the opportunity to, you know, go for it on fourth down, potentially ice the game at that point, really, because if you get that first down, I think there's still a slim possibility. I don't recall the exact scenario, but I'm pretty sure at that point, at the very least, you give Indianapolis the ball, in the same type of situation with minimal time and probably no timeouts if you play your cards correctly. But at the end of the day, this is just all too familiar sight. Just again, what this team does is come out flat. They come out flat. They do nothing for however many possessions in a row, including a drive where they went 4 and out. Um, gave Indianapolis the ball at the 40-yard line where they were able to tack on a long field goal to make it 13-0 at that time. This offense, it's just inefficient. When you look at the stat line, you look at the box score, you see that we scored 27 points, our season high. Um, you look at Rodgers' stat line, you can tell yourself all you want to hear about whether or not this was a good game, bad game from Aaron Rodgers. Let's be real. The stats look okay. 22 of 29, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. It doesn't look terrible, but when you look at this game as a whole, um, he was absolutely inefficient in the first half. That's fact of the matter is he was just missing on throws. Had Garrett Wilson wide open on a post route or a deep dig route, and completely missed him. Threw the ball behind him. Um, the there was a point in this game where he was 5 for 10 for like 10 yards or whatever it was. It was something ridiculous. This is the NFL. This is big boy football. You know, Having that many completions for minimal yardage tells us that you are not throwing the ball down the field, you are not stretching the field, and defenses are taking advantage of that. If you don't trust enough to throw down the field, they're gonna play that 5-10 yard defense. If that's what you're showing them, that you're not going to throw down the ball down the field, that's what they're going to do. And this is the same shit that defenses have done to us over the past few years with Zach Wilson at quarterback, because Zach Wilson couldn't stretch the field. It has continued, and whether or not that's Rodgers, whether or not that's the play calling, whatever the case may be, it's got to change. I mean, it's got to change, and if it's not this year, something's got to happen next year. The Jets are in a situation where they're going to be picking in the top 10. I look at the schedule of the next 6 games, the last 6 games of the season. They have 2 games against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are not a great team, but they're better than the Jets right now. They can score points, and with the way that this Jets defense has played over the course of this first 11 games, they're going to have their hands full with a team that can run the football. And the Dolphins, the Dolphins are most efficient when they're passing the ball, but the secondary hasn't proven, that they can stop anybody. Look what Anthony Richardson did yesterday. Threw for almost 300 yards and had 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 passing. This is a guy who got benched. He got benched for kind of making poor decisions, and obviously the whole tapping his helmet thing, getting off the field, wasn't a good look. That's what put Joe Flacco in for a couple of weeks. Joe Flacco was just abysmal, and they went back to Anthony Richardson. And I kind of called it. I really called this type of situation, that the Jets have struggled against running quarterbacks, and Anthony Richardson will take advantage of that. And he did. He looked like Cam Newton in this game. The ability to run the football, while also throwing it efficiently downfield. Anthony Richardson had a good game this week against a poor Jets defense, a defense that should really be ashamed of themselves, a defense who coming into the season talked about the standard, talked about what they could be, what they can, what the ceiling of this defense. Well, we're seeing their floor. At least I hope it's their floor, because it really doesn't seem like it can get much worse. Against a quarterback that really has done nothing in his first year and a half as a pro, you come out and look like this. With an 8-point lead, in the fourth quarter, you allow him to work his way back into it and take a lead himself. And then late in the game, we have 40 seconds with the football, and Aaron Rodgers, who has seen it all, has done it all, and understands clock management like anybody else, takes a sack, throws the ball backwards for what was a bit major loss on a fumble. And it's reached a point here where you just don't know what direction to go in anymore. You got guys like Sauce Gardner on social media arguing with other fans about, you know, listen, we're not football players. We're nowhere near it, obviously. That's why I'm sitting here talking about football and not playing it. So, but we at least watch the games and we can tell when a player is struggling. We can tell where that player is struggling. When you're tackling a guy and you fling him and he gains 20 yards like he did with Trey McBride, that's obviously Trey McBride is a bigger player. I don't expect Sauce to be able to just lay him out, tackle him, and win that one outright. But it's not just that one. It's been week after week poor tackling. Even yesterday, I think it was A.D. Mitchell had a little short short catch. Sauce Gardner just dives at his feet and no tackling there. There was not even a sniff of a potential tackle there. Mitchell ends up bringing it all the way down to the 1 yard line. Listen, I love Sauce, and I do think he's long term part of whatever the solution might be. I do think the Jets need to keep him around, but the guy's got to stay off social media if he can't handle the negativity. We were praising him for the past 2 years because he was an amazing player. He was outstanding in his first couple of years, all pro in both those seasons. But he's having a down year, and you got to face the music. You're having a bad year. Does that mean you're a bust? No, it absolutely does not mean you're a bust. But you can't handle the criticism and you start talking out, lashing out against fans for just admitting the truth and admitting the facts that you have struggled, the same people that backed you are gonna turn against you. And whether or not that's what you want, that's completely up to you. But as a fan base, we're frustrated because we were told on multiple occasions that when Aaron Rodgers got back, everything would be okay. And it has not been okay. We're 3-8. We're worse than last year. I look at the schedule and I promise you I don't see 2 wins coming out of this team. Again, I was talking about it earlier. We have Dolphins twice. I think we go 0-2. I don't necessarily see a situation where we beat the Dolphins. That's how bad we are right now. Dolphins aren't terrible, but they aren't great either. We're gonna lose to the Dolphins. We play the Bills in Buffalo. That's gonna be a shit show. That's just gonna be disgusting. We play Seattle. I mean, Seattle can put up points. They have absolutely ridiculous receivers over there. They have Metcalf, they have Jackson Smith and Jigba, they have Lockett, they have a good running game. Geno Smith looks like, a top 15 quarterback for sure. He'll be able to take advantage of his defense, and he's going to have that retribution aspect to it. I know he's already played us a couple times, and he has already beaten us. I understand all that, but it's something about going against your former team that kicked you to the side of the road. Albeit rightfully so. I mean, it wasn't shaping out to be like he was our long term solution at the time. There'll be retribution in his mind for sure. And then what game am I missing? The Rams, and then obviously the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are the game I look at and say, okay, maybe there's a shot. But I mean, for a team that was expected to make a playoff appearance, let's start there. Not going to happen. Obviously, with the stats I mentioned earlier, 2% opportunity if they win out, which isn't going to happen. It's it's sad. It really is for a fan base that just deserves better. Like plain and simple. I mean, it's there's there's obliviousness like with fan bases sometimes, like with you know, oh, this team is great, and it's just because you love your players. But there's no doubt in my mind there's talent on this roster. Like there's no doubt. All these players that were great didn't forget to play football. Didn't forget how to play football. It's not what happened here. been poor coaching. It's been a regressing Aaron Rodgers. It's been miscommunication after miscommunication. It's been, missing your opportunities in those critical areas of the field. It's been the inability to stop the run. It's been the inability to stop anything on defense. That game against Arizona was just absolutely like Arizona put on a clinic against us. There are more players getting wide open this season than I think in the past couple seasons combined. There are players just streaking wide open. I think it was Josh Downs on that long reception when it was like a third and long on the very first drive of the game. Like this is just not acceptable. Like for a defense that was elite the last two seasons. Listen, I was high on what this team could be with Aaron Rodgers here. But let's make no mistake about it. I did not expect Aaron Rodgers to come in here and be an MVP caliber quarterback. Those ideas were flashed around there, and say what you want about it. I mean, there was even Peter Schrager, who basically nails his NFL picks every single season, also had Aaron Rodgers as like an MVP caliber quarterback. I didn't expect him to be that because I truly expected that this team would run through this defense and the offense would operate behind Brees Hall. I thought Brees Hall would have a monster year this year, and he is having a good year. I just think there's been way too many gaps in his production because I think that this play calling has just been, you know, not playing to his strengths. I look back to that Buffalo game, and this is always the game I kind of go back to, where Brees Hall had one of his better games, and this running game had one of its better games. They were using motion. They were moving Garrett Wilson around the line of scrimmage, into the backfield. There was so much confusion going on in that game, and I think it got to Buffalo. Like there was major confusion, and the Jets had one of their best games offensively in that game. From a they didn't have their highest point outage, but it was it seemed like a solid game plan in what was Downing's first game as a play caller, and I'm not sure what happened. Because when you're successful at something, you try and I mean, I would think you continue to do that or work off of that same kind of playing style. But no, I have not seen an offense that looks like that ever since that first game with him as a play caller. It's just been the same shit that we saw even the 5 weeks before that. Lack of motion, lack of creativity, just not enough good football being played. A lot of people want to point the finger at the offense for the defensive struggles. Um, I don't know. I look at this as like a team that just doesn't play complementary football. Period. So when the defense is playing poorly, the offense is usually playing great. When the offense is playing great, the defense is playing poorly. It's just I think I said it the same way twice. Whatever, you guys get the drift. It's been frustrating. It's been tiresome to even think about what this team is. But what it was supposed to be was a team that ran through Brees Hall, and he's having an efficient season. He's got over 600 yards rushing. Um, his receiving total is probably out there too. I'm trying to pull it up here. 400 yards. I mean, probably on pace for another 1,500 yard season like he had last year, which is awesome. But I just expected this offense to be more driven through him. Was I predicting a 2,000 yard season? I mean, obviously, that's a major step from the year prior, but thought it was possible if this offense was run the way that I think that most of us expected it to. You know, when we were efficient the year before Aaron Rodgers got here, the offense ran through Brees Hall before he tore his ACL. Everything was running through him. He was scoring touchdowns every week. He was every bit of what you looked at to be a franchise running back. And I still think he is. I mean, but here we are in year 3, going into year 4. And now you have all those conversations starting. Are we going to pay this guy? Are we going to pay that guy? Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, so on and so forth. Jermaine Johnson. That whole entire draft class now is it's starting to hit that point where you have to ask yourself, are we going to pay these guys? And the answer is you can't pay everyone. So you got to figure out who is part of the problem and who's part of the solution. And I think I think Garrett Wilson's 100% part of the solution. I think Brees Hall can be part of the solution. I mean, I don't see a reason not to believe it. And I do think, I mean, it's tough, but it depends on what you want here. I mean, do you want a player that's going to go on social media and lash out at the players? I mean, he's got to grow up. Sauce Gardner does. That's just unacceptable. That is one of the things that really kind of irks me the most about the way the season has gone. Is after Salah got fired, the um, big buzzword at One Jets Drive was accountability. And when you have a player going on social media and basically saying that, you know, dismissing the fact that he's had a poor season from a tackling perspective, what are you talking about in these meetings if you're not talking about how poor his tackling has been? Is he that oblivious that he does not see that he's been struggling from a tackling perspective? I hope not. I really hope he's not that like oblivious. Maybe it's just frustration, and I understand that they're humans too. But you gotta ignore social media if you can't handle it. It's not all good on social media. And I know he gets a lot of flack from other fan bases, and he's always held cool to that stuff because we always had his back. But now that he's struggling, you know, we're gonna call things as we see it. As fans, if you can't tackle, we are gonna call it out. Unfortunately, sucks, but that's just the way it is. And for you to just be oblivious to it and act like none of us know what we're talking about, it just makes you look a little silly. In all honesty, I don't know where the rest of the season goes. Honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I don't see 2 wins coming. Uh, it is the NFL. We weren't supposed to beat the Texans, and we managed to pull off an upset there and stand here with about 6 games left, and 5 of those games will you would expect us to be definitive underdogs, barring anything catastrophic with any other teams. Um, from an injury perspective, I just don't see an avenue where this team reaches like a 5-win mark total. It doesn't seem like the answer here. And with that, I mean, you're talking about a team that was, in a lot of people's eyes, um, expected to potentially be, we were AFC's favorites for a period of time. It's not outside of any sort of, I'm not saying anything that isn't true. We were favorites to win the AFCs when the season started. And we may actually end the season in last place because, as I mentioned, I don't see us winning 2 games the rest of the way. I can see the Patriots winning a couple of games. And what does that give you exactly right there? I mean, Patriots top of this right now. It's sad. It's absolutely sad. And I don't see the end of it. I just don't. What are the Jets gonna do from a front office perspective? A new coach, who are they gonna bring in to clean this mess up? Who's gonna want this job? With Aaron Rodgers here, potentially calling some shots. I also understand like I don't know the cap gymnastics that has to happen to get Rodgers out of here. I remember when he was getting traded here that the suggested cap hit against the Packers was like some crazy shit, like $50 million cap hit, whatever. and before he left, there was some sort of like cap restructuring thing that was done to where he was able to leave and not have as much of a cap hit on the Packers' salary cap the year he was traded. I don't know. I'm not a capologist to answer that question. Maybe there is something, um, but I think the only avenue of cap savings just deferring the cap hit to next year through like a post June 1 designation of some sort, which limits us to what we can do um, in the offseason. You're talking about a team that has $30 million in cap space. A lot can be cleared up if Devontae Adams is released, but now you're really trimming any sort of potential of what could be, a quote unquote competitive 2025 season. Could you replace Devontae Adams with another good receiver at a lot less of what his cap hit is for next year? Yeah, sure. Do I think this Jets team can? I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I just don't know. It would really just take, you know, some drastic head coach hire slash quarterback drafted type of combination. And, we've done that so many times and it's failed every single time. And I understand you still need to do that until you find the guy, you don't have the guy. And that's just, obviously been the moral of the story for the Jets. And even sometimes when you find the guy, it's just not the right guy. We had Chad Pennington for years and it was fun watching football with him as our quarterback, but unfortunately injuries kind of changed things for him. He wasn't the same quarterback. His arm he lost that arm power. He was always was an accurate quarterback, and he always had us, kind of in that realm of playoffs or not, around the bubble there, and we went to divisional championship games in a lot of seasons with him. Um, went to more division championships with him than playoff appearances in the last however many. We won more division titles with him at quarterback than even playoff appearances since he's left. So last Jets quarterback to win a division title was Chad Pennington. And we sit here just with the same questions, same problems that we always do. Just more questions than answers at this point. It's a sad day. Um, you look at the tape of this game, it's just 10 first downs, 10 first downs this entire game. It's not good. Time of possession was 34-26. That's rounding in our favor on that one, in favor of the Colts. It's a team that struggled. Every asset of this team is just getting worse and worse and worse as the season progresses. Defense is getting worse. The offense just every week comes out and does not look like it belongs in the NFL. I understand in the Arizona game we're able to get down the field, but this league is not about getting down the field and settling for field goals. This league is about winning games by scoring touchdowns. That's how you win football games. But when you're scoring touchdowns and that's all working out for you, great. Your defense got to make a few stops, and none of that ever happens. Um, Alongside one another. Special teams, the coverage has been getting worse and worse each week as well. In this game, there was a 43-yard kick return on the punts. There was room on plenty of punts. There was opportunities to down them inside the 10 to 15-yard line, and I don't know what's happened to the punt coverage. That's always been a strength for this team. Even when we had a terrible punter and Braden Mann, at least the coverage was getting there. Just the punting was just not helpful for the coverage team to get down there and be able to make a tackle. But when Hardy was here, he was always right around the football on these punts. But we were sold on Irv Charles, and it's just one thing after another. Just one poor play after one poor play, one poor game after one poor game. Everything is falling apart for this team. And again, the only end I see is week 18 when that final clock hits triple zeros is really the last opportunity I really could see where things happen. And again, I kind of refer back to who's coming in here to change it all. What head coach? Are the Jets going to go all in for a guy like Mike Vrabel, who probably doesn't want to come here? I mean, being a Patriots guy, let's kind of take that into perspective too. I don't know if he's, like a Bill Belichick from the perspective of, of that, but he was a lifelong Patriot. I mean, he did play a couple years outside the Patriots organization, but played long enough with the Patriots to know the Patriots hate the Jets. Does that How does that impact his decision, if anything at all? Obviously, money talks, so the Jets might have to come out with a couple extra dollars than the next team to make sure he comes here, offer him potentially a little bit more control than the next guy. Um, which at the end of the day, does control even freaking matter? Like, you really want your GM and head coach to be on the same page. Um, at the end of the day, I mean, look at a team like Detroit. I mean, that's a team that looks like everybody is spewing out the same message, spewing out the same, you know, that team, they have an identity. There's no doubt about it. That team has an identity, and that identity is Dan Campbell. But you can also see that that team, although their identity is smash mouth, run the football, they still have games like yesterday where they air it out like they did. Just because your identity says one thing doesn't mean you have to be that thing. Um, Detroit Lions are just a great team. It's hard to compare a team like us to what they are, and it's so crazy to think like we were in a scenario that off season where we were hiring a coach, they were hiring a coach, and like every other cycle, we hire the wrong guy. I tell myself like every single time we hire somebody, it'll be the right guy. I don't know. I'm tired of just assuming things are going to work out and they don't. Who's going to come in here and just change the culture? It gets talked about, it gets talked about, it gets talked about. Who is going to come in here and just change it all? Change the nonsense. Stop the bullshit. Show these players this game is not an individual sport. It's a fucking team sport. Doesn't matter how good you are as a corner. Doesn't matter how good you are as a wide receiver. It doesn't matter how good you are as a quarterback. Doesn't matter how good you are as an offensive lineman. It's how you work one with the other 10 players on the field. And right now, there's no cohesiveness on either side of the football. There's somebody screwing up on every single play, and there's not someone there to back him up when he fucks up. There's not in enough scenarios. Obviously, every single play would be a touchdown if there wasn't somebody there to pick up scraps. So obviously, there's teamwork happening to an extent. We look at a team like the Chargers last night on defense. Yeah, they started to fall apart, but they made the necessary plays. They look like a team that's operating, in tandem with one another. They have a lot less talent than we have. More talent at quarterback right now. Let's put it out there. The Jets are definitely falling themselves in the bottom half of the league at the quarterback position. And for how much longer can we withstand that? I look at Aaron Rodgers' contract and I don't see a way out of it. He likely is our best option going into 2025. Unless we draft somebody that we believe can be the future quarterback. But I also don't expect this team to reach for a quarterback. Like that's the game that we're playing right now. We reached for Zach Wilson a couple years ago and it set us back 4 years. Unfortunately, we were in a situation where we had no choice. I mean, supposedly, could have kept Sam, but then we'd have to worry about paying him the fifth year option, whatever. There was a lot jazz around it. Plus, I think Sam needed a change of scenery as well. And obviously he did because it didn't work in the next scenery. It didn't work in the following one after that. I think the San Francisco one was a good opportunity for him to learn behind a solid offensive minded coach instead of the garbage that we put him through. Um, but obviously that's a conversation for another day. It's a conversation we've already had, so on and so forth. I just don't see an area where there's any optimism. Um, Obviously not for the rest of the season, but who knows moving forward. A new GM's going to be here. A new head coach is going to be here. There'll be plenty out there claiming each to be the next Vince Lombardi, Ozzie Newsome. That's who the Jets are going to get, according to this fan base, and it always is. The Jets never miss on these guys, and God forbid you say otherwise. You're an asshole. Sick and tired of it. Um, the Johnsons have not hired a good leader. Um, not not since they've been here. The closest thing was probably Mangini, because he helped build those rosters from his time here from 2006, 2008. Helped build those rosters, and got let go after the Brett Favre season. Rex Ryan was able to work with Tannenbaum for a few years and benefit off of those strong rosters that eventually led to the back-to-back AFC Championship games. But unfortunately, the roster building after a couple of years started to fall off. Started to, you know, you had your issues internally with certain players. All of a sudden, from 2010 till now, well, 2011 till now, no playoff appearances, and I don't see one coming anytime soon unless this team can really figure something out, change something, get it right this time. That's all you can really hope for. Um, Critical off season coming up, as we always say, it's every single season. There's a critical off season. This is a critical off season. Every single season is a critical off season for this team, and every single off season they fail. It's just been the nature of what this team has done to us as fans. And again, I just don't see an end in sight unless there's major changes at the top. Owner's not firing himself. There's got to be somebody brought in who knows what the frig they're doing. And sometimes to hire that guy, it takes opening up the wallet. And whether or not the Johnsons are willing to do that is obviously something that'll be a big topic of conversation for the next 60 days, roughly, maybe a little more than that. But that's all I've got here. Unfortunately, once again, another sad, sad day. If you're a fan of the New York Jets, and we've reached that tankathon scouring point of the season where you're just looking at it and trying to identify how many losses the Jets need to secure a top high enough pick to potentially find ourselves in the market for a quarterback. And I mean, let's be real. I mean, even this quarterback class isn't one to be overly thrilled about. I mean, I like Cam Ward. A lot of people like Shedeur Sanders. A lot of people don't, for whatever reasons. He's just a different type of prospect than we've seen in a very long time because I feel like he's the first prospect that's had the benefit of NIL from start to finish, really. So, I mean, there's just a different prospect coming out now than there ever has been. Um, I got to be real with you. I've not analyzed these quarterbacks nearly enough as maybe the year that Trevor Lawrence was coming out and Justin Fields was coming out. And even then, I had no look at Zach Wilson until all of a sudden the Jets win a game in December against the Rams. And for the longest time, it was Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Zach Wilson, pops his head out there. It's like NFL gods setting us up for failure on that one, as they always do. It's just, Jets don't get the run of the luck, unfortunately. That's all I got. Appreciate anybody for joining. If you haven't already, Please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and let's go Jets.